presenting a very special edition of Eric's Life Story, a Christmas edition.
Oh.
And we're going to talk to Eric about what Christmas means to him.
Christmas,
Eric, Christmas.
Now, you've only got to look round the room, excuse me, and you can see Christmas decorations everywhere.
It is.
And in the house, I think we've got, somebody counted them the other day, and they said we've got 10 Christmas trees.
My goodness
We've got
me.
one in the corner there. I don't know whether our camera can't see it yet, but maybe
It is very
you'll see
beautiful.
it. And
Very
of course,
beautiful.
what I make right at the top of the Christmas list, we've got a big crib scene.
Which is important.
I think it is. Do you know, I looked
So
at
important.
15 films in the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks, all Christmas films. My daughter records them for me.
Yep.
You know, I think there's a special Christmas
There's a Christmas channel.
She
Yeah.
records all the Christmas films for me. And you know, all of that 15 shows, there wasn't one mention of the child Jesus. Can you believe that? It was all Santa Claus.
Yes.
Santa Claus this, Santa Claus getting lost, Santa Claus losing his memory.
Nothing to do with the true meaning of Christmas.
Nothing at all, you know.
No, there isn't.
And you
So,
just wonder,
I know.
what has happened to Christmas? But of course, I go back an awful long way. You're still a youngster, so
No, I'm not
it's,
that young.
you are. But in January, I reached my 92nd year.
My goodness me.
So it's not bad, is it?
It is very, very good.
But anyway, the whole thing is this: I have memories, and people don't realise how much life has changed between now and 50 years ago.
Right, exactly.
You see, I go back before the Second World War, and life was completely different then. People don't realise it, but because there wasn't television, there was very limited wireless. So what did people do? They listened to the wireless. I had a what do you call it, crystal set.
Oh, yes.
And I used to have
Yes.
my little crystal set, which didn't
yes.
have batteries, didn't have mains power.
No.
It's you wouldn't remember a crystal set.
Oh, I do. My dad had one.
Did he really?
My dad did
he?
have one.
Well, there
He
you
actually
are.
made his own.
He would have
so
done. This is
he
what you had
did,
to do.
He
But,
did.
But as long as you had 2 long pieces of wire, so you put one out in the garden
Yeah.
as the aerial and dig something into the earth. You had an aerial and an earth, and you had your little crystal with this little wire on it and headphones,
Yeah.
and bingo, you're away. So it's but then times change.
Oh, goodness, yes.
But anyway, coming back to Christmas,
Yeah.
Christmas was such a fantastic time in those days because people had nothing else to think about. And not only that, but the church was the centre of their lives.
Yes.
Because there wasn't television, there was nothing, as we were just saying a moment ago. They had to go out and they went to the cinema.
Yes.
So you'd have queues at the cinema. And of course the cinema wasn't as it is today. You're going to see one film and that's it. It was an occasion.
Yeah.
I must just switch my thing off before.
Don't show it's live. We say it's live.
Let me spit off the sound. There we are. That's off. Cinema wasn't as it is today. You went to the cinema and you queued up, first of all. You used to have queues round the block at the cinema. They used to start at sort of 6:30 or 7 or whatever time it was. But then it was an occasion. You went in and there was in front of the stage, up would come the organ, on a hydraulic thing, him playing away. And then of course, while you were waiting for the film to start, the women with the trays coming round with teas and ice creams and drinks and sweets and everything you wanted. And then you saw your first film.
Yeah.
Well, and then of course you had the news. You always had the news. In fact, you caught up with your news at the cinema. This was the thing.
Yeah.
I think some cinemas still show the news. I forgot who the people were. You don't remember the name of the...
Path News, wasn't it?
Pathé
News. That's right, yeah.
And that was the big thing of how you got your news at the cinema.
Yeah.
Then of course there'd be an interval. And in the interval they'd come round selling you tea and ice cream and all the rest of it, and the organist would come up again and have it, and of course it would go down again, and then you'd have the second film, or I think it was the other way round actually. They used to show you that the first film was a minor film,
Yeah.
And then after the interval, you had
Then you
a
had
big
your main,
film.
yeah.
After the news,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course at the end, this is the bit that we've all forgotten. Do you know what happened at the end?
We sing God Save the Queen or God Save the King. It would have been
Absolutely,
during the war years.
yes. They had the national anthem,
Mm.
and not only that, but everybody stood up for it.
Oh goodness, yeah.
So the whole cinema raised themselves up and sang the national anthem. Now, can you imagine that today?
No. It just wouldn't happen.
Just
would
wouldn't
it?
happen.
It just wouldn't happen.
But this is how times have changed, and Christmas is exactly the same. Before the war, as I say, there was no television, and this television which has brought everybody into the houses, and of course before the war the pubs were the centre of life.
Oh goodness, yes.
So everybody went into the pub.
Yes.
People still go into the pub. You're going to the pub.
Of course I do.
Of course you do. In Felixstowe, we're very with it all, backdated, and you know, pubs are still a centre. But today most of them have become restaurants. I have said this before, and it's sad in a lot of ways, but this is where people went. But Christmas was such a wonderful time, but it's centred around the church.
Yes.
And everybody went 2 or 3 times in the evening a week to whist drives. That's was good. And there was youth clubs, there was scouts, there was
I do remember
guides.
youth clubs. I do remember youth clubs when
There
I
you
was
are.
younger.
Now youth clubs now.
You don't get them. I was talking to my daughter actually about that the other day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. But it's over a number of years, and things have declined like that. But Christmas became a big feature. And people, they didn't have the money that they have today. And, the big feature of it, they used to buy these strips of paper. And so everybody, before Christmas, they couldn't afford decorations. So that everybody would sit down and they'd get these things and start putting them, the loops.
Paper chains.
Paper chains.
Paper chains.
So
Absolutely
everybody-
brilliant.
Excuse me, I've got a cough. Everybody would be making their paper chains, and they decorated. And of course, the outside, nobody could afford to have lights outside the houses, but people would decorate and so they see through the windows. And there were the odd ones, but today I drove home from I think it was Colchester or somewhere, and the number of houses in Colchester, they're absolutely a mass of lights. Lovely, but it just shows you how people yearn, I think, for Christmas.
Yes.
And it's still a big occasion, and it's part
goodness,
of
yes.
what everybody wants.
It is, but it's commercial, isn't it, Eric?
It's
It's
so
become
commercial.
so commercial nowadays.
And what people don't realise, I have said this before, it's all the shops now, they're the supermarkets really, which have killed everything. But before the war, you had all the groups of people, and they'd have the 5 main shops. I have talked about this before, and it's amazing how each little community had a small amount of how shall I say, shopping, and then you'd have the stores. You remember Gamages? That was the big one.
I've heard of Gamages.
Everybody went up to London, would visit Gamages. And I mean, what are your memories of your Christmas in the childhood?
As a childhood, I'm going back to the 1960s, and still, really, it wasn't over commercialised.
No.
We never had a Christmas tree up to maybe 2 or 3 days before Christmas.
Really? That's
And
interesting.
that coincided because my grandmother, she's actually died before I was born.
Yes.
It was her birthday on the 17th of December.
Really?
So
Oh,
that
that's
was
big, yes.
so that was the day of actually putting the tree up. It was, presents weren't huge or big or anything else, and I literally, a stocking I had still the traditional, a bit of fruit, I still had those nuts in there.
That's right. Yes.
Maybe an annual.
Yes.
I would look forward to the annual, and probably a little board game, and things like that. So in those days it was still under commercialised,
It was, yes.
So I'm lucky to experience that.
And
I
people
must
don't
admit.
realise how children have changed as well.
Oh,
This is what you
goodness,
don't
yes.
realise. Today,
Yes.
children are in command. At least that's the impression I get.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I totally
Whereas
agree
in
with
my
you.
day, the expression was children should be
Seen and not heard.
There you are, you see, even you remember it. It's quite right. Well, this is how it
Oh,
used
dear.
to be. A child was, I can remember my parents having visitors and my being condemned to the kitchen.
Oh, yes.
And I'd go and I'd creep through and I'd go outside the door, the sitting room door where the visitors would be, and I'd listen. And it was a great, I can't remember how old I must have been, 5 or 6 or 7. But today the child would be in the room and part of the scene. But in those days the child was...
Oh, goodness, yes,
you know,
definitely.
had to
definitely.
Well, it's a good thing, really, I suppose.
I think it is. There was more respect. I think there was totally more respect,
Yes.
you know, in those days. So that seems to have gone out the window.
Well, I think it has.
And manners to a certain extent. I mean, how many children nowadays say, please, can I leave the table, or things like that? I mean, they just don't do it. But there again, it's the parents' fault. I mean, you can carry on with these traditions. You can still,
Yeah.
you know, it is up to the parents.
It
Surely.
is really.
It
Well,
is.
It's training.
It is true.
But Christmas is a wonderful time of the year.
Definitely
And,
is.
You know, there's hats hanging up, the stockings.
Oh,
It
goodness,
was such a
lovely.
wonderful thing. Christmas shopping, going out, getting
Yeah.
all the food. And I think I've mentioned it before on this show, but I think I repeat it again because a chicken. Now, it was the biggest treat you ever had. And
That's
we used to have a
right.
chicken, do you know, once a year? On Christmas.
On Christmas.
We
Oh,
couldn't
that's
afford we
right.
couldn't afford a turkey,
Yeah.
but we had a chicken, for
Mm.
Christmas dinner, and that was amazing. Now I walk around Iceland and I see they've got 2 chicken breasts for £1.
Something really ridiculous.
Or you can buy a fully
Yeah.
full one for about £3. It's
Exactly.
completely ridiculous.
Exactly.
but,
It's completely changed, isn't it? Completely changed.
But in those days, I used to be involved, when I was evacuated, I went down to Sussex and I ended up on a farm. And of course, it was fascinating because Christmas was a big event. You'd have all the geese, you know, loads of hundreds of geese and things, which you had to then kill
Yes.
for Christmas. And I can remember, it's dreadful, I hope I won't offend anybody by saying it, but we used to hang the geese upside down from a branch,
Yeah.
take hold of their neck, wallop their heads. It was a very quick death.
Humane.
It was a humane death. But then the work started. You had to, first of all, bleed them.
Yes.
People don't realise that.
Yes.
You had to get out, you used to get a tremendous amount of blood out of them. But apparently if you didn't get the blood out,
Yeah.
and I suppose it's all done now by, you know, all the commercial people, but you had to hang them upside down with a bucket,
Yeah.
and so the blood drained out of
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Then they went in, we had 2 or 3 women in a shed, and they would then pluck them, which was a major job. And then of course at the bottom of the after they'd taken the big feathers out, was all the down.
Yes.
Lovely, soft, white down.
Yes.
And that would be put separately, and that was beautiful. Have you got a down pillow?
Duvet.
Have
I've
you got a
got
down duvet?
I've got
have
a
you?
down duvet.
Have you? Oh well,
Yes.
you're
Very nice
very, very expensive. I hate to think what you can't. I know I wanted a down pillow,
Yeah.
and I went to John Lewis's, you know, in Ransom Park.
Yes, yeah.
And do you know how much I had to pay for a down pillow?
Tell me.
£60 for a down pillow.
Yeah.
But the joy of it, you put your head on it and it
So
just,
soft,
you're
it's
floating
so
away.
soft.
It's an experience. But no, Christmas was so much, it was viewed from a different way. It wasn't so commercial as it is now. It was more of a celebration.
Yes.
And of course, behind you there's a crib scene. And Christmas in those days, everybody had crib scenes everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Today you wouldn't see, you go into every church, there was a crib scene.
That's right.
I wonder how many churches today have got crib scenes.
Oh, that's a good point, really.
I wonder,
Very
you
good
know, it's
point.
interesting to see. And of course then midnight mass, you have no idea. It was
Oh, yes.
packed solid.
Yes, I remember that.
I used to
remember
go up
that.
to Westminster Cathedral
Yeah.
sometimes for Westminster, and you know the size of Westminster Cathedral,
Huge.
it's absolutely huge. But that was packed, you couldn't get, unless you went at 11 o'clock, you couldn't get a seat, and people were overflowing on the outside. I went 5 or 10 years ago, because we've got a flat next
Yes.
to Westminster Cathedral, and I went 5 or 10 years ago, and you know, there was rows of empty seats. There was a fair number of people there, but the number and bulk of people were there, I hate to say, were foreigners.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
But it's a sort of religion has gone out of people's mind, and I think Christmas, it's a good time to remember, because the very name Christ Mass,
Exactly.
it's the birth of Christ.
Exactly. People have lost the true meaning of Christmas.
Well,
That's
this
what
is
it
right.
is, Eric.
This is
It's
right.
what it's all about.
It's all Santa Claus now.
It is Santa Claus.
But anyway, we must keep the spirit of Christmas.
Yes,
And
definitely.
I can only say, we wish everybody love, goodwill, and happiness at this time of the year. It's a gorgeous time of the year.
It definitely is.
Give people everything you can.
That's it. Happy
And
Christmas, everybody.
very happy Christmas. Enjoy it and spread love and goodwill to everybody. Goodbye and a happy Christmas to you.
Bye-bye.